Hello, Geometry Basic. Miss Collin here. I'm going to get you guys started on a quick little couple tips and suggestions on how to work through pages 11 through 14. So this is proof on practice on proofs. And just a couple little things. Remember, the first thing that you're wanting to do when you go through these is labeling your given information. I also have added in here that I always put my proofs, also what I'm going to, what is my goal at the end. So I'm putting my given information on my photo, and then I'm writing that down as my first or two or even three sometimes reasons. This gets you going on the problem, and it gets you to start seeing things. So for example, here in this first one, I see that I only am given two details of information, which means I'm going to have to add something in order to, prove that the two triangles are congruent. Now, this problem is taking a little bit further, and we're going now to CPCTC. Okay, so you'll see that our proof here is actually not by triangles, but congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That's what CPCTC stands for. So it stands for congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. What does this mean? This means that when we prove that two triangles are congruent by a shortcut, we can then say that any two other things of that triangle are congruent that are corresponding. So, for example, our proof that we want to get to is that FG here and JH are congruent. Well, first we have to say that these two triangles are congruent to say that these sides are congruent. So this is why shortcuts kind of work. And, when we were going through that exploration, this really helps us to understand CPCTC because we found that there's only one other side that can work. There's only one triangle you can make with these certain shortcuts, okay? So, once again, the two things that we can assumptions here are what? Reflexive property and vertical angles, okay? So if you are still confused on what these mean, vertical angles or what reflexive property is, you need to use Google, my friends, and you need to look back at your notes, okay? Vertical angles would be down here, and then right now we're going to do reflexive property. So, real quick, jumping in, they say that, here's my given information, and then I know that the only thing here, I don't have vertical angles, but I do have this shared line. Remember, that's what we look for a reflexive property. So I can say that JG is congruent to JG by reflexive property, and now I have two congruent triangles here and here by side, angle, side. Okay, remember, you never start in the middle here you always start on the left or the right. So side, angle, side, or side, angle, side. Either way, these two triangles are congruent by SAS, side, angle, side. Okay, so here I would write that triangle, FJG is congruent to triangle HGJ by side, angle, side. Okay, but be careful, that's not what they're asking you here on these pages. There's some that they are, but there's most that they're not. Here they're asking you should have read this in your notes, about CPCTC, which now, since I showed that these triangles are congruent, we're just taking it a step further, and I can now say that FG is congruent to JH by, and that's where this comes in. Why? Because we showed that those two triangles are congruent, so we can say that any other parts of them are also congruent. Okay. So I'm going to go through a couple quick more examples of for you, and then you'll be able to see a couple more that are already labeled for you. So here, once again, my given information I have listed here, and then I have my what I'm trying to prove down here. I know that in order to prove this angle and that angle congruent, I'm also going to have to prove the triangles congruent. So I'm going to add that in here. Triangle MXN is congruent to triangle PXO, and by what? Well, I'm going to label my picture to figure it out, right? Now, they tell me X is the midpoint of MP. So right away, bam, what did I say about midpoint? It slashes those into congruent parts. And same thing here with NO. Okay, so I'm going to label those. All right, I only have 2 things in this triangle down here and then 2 things in this triangle up here, so I'm going to have to label something else. What's it going to be? Vertical angles. People, this is what vertical angles look like. Upside down, V. Bam. All right, so I have now 3 things. Let's see, side angle side. Again, is that a thing? Yes, it is. That works. That is a congruency shortcut. Okay, so eventually I can say that angle N is congruent to angle O, and the only reason for that is because those are congruent. So CPCTC, congruent parts, congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, now here I'm just going to show you this is how I label my photo. Okay, like I said, first thing I do, label that given information. Coming up here, same thing again. I'm noticing here, oh, I only have 2, so I'm going to have to add something here. Okay, what are you going to add in order to prove those triangles congruent? Okay, you'll notice your ending reason, guys, for all of these is going to be CPCTC, because as soon as you prove those triangles congruent. What do I have here? You should notice something from my previous example, from what I have labeled. Okay, here, remember an angle bisector. AD bisects angle BAC. So, bam, what does that mean? It means these become congruent. Okay, and then the only other information they give us is that angle B is congruent to angle C. Now remember, I'm doing double arcs because if I just do one, that says all 4 of these are congruent, which is just not true. So now I have angle. I can't have another angle. I need another side. The only other side I can label here, bam, is reflexive property. Okay. What is this? Angle, side, angle. Okay. All right, come over here. This one's a great one. They tell you that X and H are right angles. And then they also tell you that HQ is congruent to XM. Okay, cool. Whenever you see right angles, what should you be thinking of? You should be thinking of hypotenuse leg. Here I have a leg, this is my hypotenuse, and I can say that this is congruent to itself by reflexive property. Bam, I got hypotenuse leg here, people. Okay, that's how I'm going to prove these 2 triangles are congruent, and then I'm going to prove these angles congruent by CPCTC. Okay, come on down here. Here's my labeled picture here. What am I going to add? Do I have vertical angles? No. Bam, but that's congruent to itself. Okay? Now be careful. It's not angle, side, angle, because I jumped this angle. Remember, you can't move that pen. Okay? So, side, angle, or angle, side is how you're proving this one. Angle, side, or side, angle. Don't skip an angle. Okay? All right, down here, Q is a midpoint. You guys got to know midpoint by now. Whatever it's the midpoint of, PR, it's splitting that line in half. Okay? So bam, bam, those are congruent. And then they tell me PS is congruent to this. What, do I have vertical angles here? Absolutely not. Once again, they share this side, so I'm going to mark that congruent to itself. And you should be seeing side, 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 my friends. All right? And this is the last page you're going to finish up here. I didn't mark these ones yet, but you should really start to see that, see what I'm doing here. That MR is congruent to RP, bam, bam. Angle M is congruent to angle P, bam, bam. And now they want me to prove these triangles congruent in order to prove these sides congruent. Well, what's the only thing I can add here? Vertical angles, bam. So I have angle, side, angle. Okay. Once again, here's another one that tells you they're right angles, so I should be seeing hypotenuse leg. All right. All of these end with your reason should be CPCTC for all of these. Okay, I hope that helped a little bit. Have a happy snow day, and I hope to see this completed on Tuesday.